Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome to Life on Purpose. I invite you to join in on this journey to live a life of deep meaning and intention. Welcome to our episode today of Life on Purpose. I am so glad to welcome my friend, Brooke Small here. And I met Brooke several years ago. And I'm so grateful to have her on today. I love how I've kind of seen you blossom into your business life now and in the life that you have with your family. And so I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you. And so let me introduce you, Brooke, and then we'll get into our conversation today.
Right.
So, Brooke Small is a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, trauma therapist specializing in somatic experiencing and EMDR. Wow, that's amazing. I love that. She is the director and founder of Riverbend Counseling in Colorado Springs and works with clients both in Colorado and Utah. She works with clients for whom past trauma, whether it is childhood, relational, spiritual, impacts their ability to live the fulfilling and meaningful lives they would like. I love that. It goes along with exactly what I love to talk about living with purpose and intention. She views healing as a whole and encompassing work, helping clients to learn how trauma affects their nervous systems and guides their internal narratives. Her goal is to help in any therapeutic relationship is to assist her clients in healing and integrating both mind and body, creating resilience and confidence in the face of life events. And I will share all of her ways you can connect with her at riverbendcolorado.com. And we'll have the links to all of those things, her podcast. I am just so grateful to have you on for this conversation because I feel like these things are so important in living a full and fulfilling life of purpose. But I wanted to start with something more personal because I have the great blessing and opportunity to be one of your friends on social media. I feel like I'm part of like this club. And one of the things that I've noticed you do in just your posting on your personal things is you have these little hashtags like for the year. And I scrolled backwards, looked back over the years at your different hashtags, and I wrote them down because I think they're just so great. So you've had hashtags such as grace and becoming, a promise to myself, take your shoes off, open palms, don't miss this. And then this year, the liturgy of small things. So I wanted to start with this because you have these hashtags for the entire year, and it just seems to kind of guide who you are and gives you that intention for your year. And it just seems so purposeful. And so I'd love to like kind of talk about where that came from, how you choose to have these hashtags, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I don't exactly remember when I started. But it's been many years now. I think life can be so distracting, especially on the internet. We can lose ourselves in that. And when I started, it was coming from I was in a really, really tough place in my life. And my go-to numbing technique is to just lose time scrolling on the internet. Like that's what I do. And I figured out during that time that I was just losing space and time trying to ignore what I was feeling, trying to ignore what felt helpless or powerless to me. And I needed something to remind me to come back to real life. and to lean into what was uncomfortable and to be present with what really mattered to me and what really mattered in the life that I was trying to build and create, even when things were hard. So that first hashtag, I don't even remember what it was, but I think that it was something about being grateful for all things. And every time I posted a picture, I would put it there so that I could remember, like, hey, this is just a place where I put pictures, but this hashtag reminds me to come home, reminds me to step back into my own life. And now every year, I take some time at the end of the year to reflect on the hashtag and think about the way that I've moved with it, how it's shaped me, when I have not aligned with it very well and when I have aligned with it. And then I pause and I've learned to lean into what is really uncomfortable for me because that's where the growth is. That's where the learning is. And so the next thing that comes up for me is leaning into what's uncomfortable so that I can learn to be present in that and learn from it. It's my teacher, right? So the hashtags are always pointing me back to what I'm supposed to be learning that year.
Oh, that is so beautiful. So I'd love to ask you because I think many people can relate to this of numbing techniques,
Mhm.
whether it is social media, it's such a kind of a easy one to go to because we think we're connecting, we think we're actually learning about our friends when probably we're not, or it could be all kinds of things. It
Right.
could be food, sex, alcohol, drugs, shopping, like,
Mhm.
it could be so many things, but, especially social media because it's so available and
Right.
just right
Right.
there. So, can you tell me, like, how you do lean into that discomfort? Like, how did you even recognize it at first that it was a problem or that you wanted it to change? And then how do you feel like you have found a way to lean into that discomfort?
Sure. So I'm a somatic therapist, meaning that I have learned to drop into my body and pay attention to what my body is trying to tell me and teach me. I think that for most of us, especially women, we're taught to distrust our bodies and disconnect from our bodies. And those uncomfortable feelings we're taught aren't right or good. And so we're just supposed to push them away. But in somatic therapy, what we learn is to come home to our body and to be in connection with and recognize that our body is on our team. And so, in doing that work and in learning to do that with clients and in doing that in my own work, I really learned that one, discomfort is necessary for growth. Nobody grows in their comfort zone. And so when I feel uncomfortable in my body, when my body's giving me signals that something's not right, whether that's a physical ailment, whether that's an emotional thing, I've learned to listen, to be quiet and to listen and to not see it as a threat, but actually communication. Where before, like I was saying, when I started these hashtags, I had all of this discomfort in my body. I had some chronic things that, like migraines, that were happening, all sorts of things that were just so uncomfortable. And because I didn't really believe at that time that my body was on my team, I tried to find ways to not feel it instead of listen.
Wow. Wow. I feel like the term somatic is becoming a little more
Hmm.
recognized.
Sure.
I'll see things about somatic exercises but I still don't feel like it's truly understood.
No,
Like
and
yeah.
soma, right? Soma just means the body. So
Okay.
so when we're talking about somatic work, we're just talking about using your body, being in communication and connection with your body to help you heal, to help you understand. So thinking about
Wow.
all of those things, like the way anxiety feels in our body, nobody likes that feeling.
Yeah.
And most of us have learned to numb it somehow, right? Even if it's just, my other go-to technique is just consuming information. Like I'll just read so many books or listen to audible books or listen to podcasts, but that's also another way of me just trying not to listen to what my body's trying to tell me. Um, so that what we're saying when we talk about soma or somatic is just, hey, what's your body telling you right now? Like at the beginning of this podcast, before we started, you were like, whew, I'm excited to do this, but I need to take some breaths. But your body's just telling you, hey, just
Mhm.
slow it down. Like just take some long breaths and slow things down and get grounded, and then you'll be ready to do what you need to do. But often we override that because we believe this false belief that we're supposed to overcome our body rather than like be in connection with.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is so important
Mhm.
to come back to our breath and our body.
Yeah,
I would love for you to you've kind of explained where you were at that time as far as physically and recognizing. Can you talk a little bit about where you are today? Like, over learning and becoming someone who helps others to recognize that. What has changed for you as far as, like, physically and how mindful you're able to be in your body?
sure. I think most change happens in 1-degree turns. Like
Mhm.
most of us don't experience 180 changes. There are all these small little things. And so when you ask that question, I'm like, oh, like, how do I describe because I'm at a 180 place, but it happened in 1-degree turns. So, I still have experiences in my body or you know, conversations that make me wildly uncomfortable that I want to ignore or that are painful. But I've moved from the place of fear to curiosity. And that happened in these 1-degree turns and in these like the hashtags being very intentional about, yep, I see this. This is uncomfortable. I'm going to lean in. Um, the one, I can't remember if you said it, but the one about take off your shoes. Yeah, take
Mm,
your shoes off. I have a tendency to think at this 20,000-foot view. Like I'm always really analytical and cognitive, which is helpful. Like it's a good skill, but sometimes I miss the boots on the ground, kind of hands in the dirt, messy experience of it. And so, Take Your Shoes Off was actually a reference to the story of Moses and how, in the experience of this burning bush, he was told to take off his shoes. And for me, in reading that, as I moved through all these 1-degree turns, it wasn't about to me, it wasn't about reverence, it was about connection. Like, hey, there is a barrier between you and God. There is a barrier between you and being deeply rooted and connected to the earth. So take off your shoes. And that was like this to me, this moment, another one of those 1-degree turns of like, hey, what are the barriers that are really keeping me from connecting to my deepest spiritual parts? What are the barriers that are keeping me from connecting to the in the ways that I want to my children, to my partner? Um, and once these hashtags are gone, they're not gone. Like I've spent 365 days thinking about them. So yeah, that it is where am I now compared to where I was? I was scared all the time about everything. And when we're scared all the time about everything, we try to control as much as we can control and actually end up feeling more out of control and disconnected. So, where I am now is a place of curiosity, of connection. I'm still living the human experience, but in a way that I feel more open to than scared of.
wow, that is powerful, and I love these conversations because I feel like I am learning through each of them and gain different perspectives, and I know that others will appreciate that as well. when you talk about numbing and kind of distracting yourself through learning and soaking in more information, I also see that as a way that I can connect. I relate to that because I'm someone who loves to absorb and always listening to new things. And that can almost look as like a noble thing, right?
Sure,
Like
sure.
even like over exercising, or there are respectable ways to numb ourselves and to distract ourselves from that really being grounded in our bodies
Mhm.
and really recognizing that we have the wisdom within us instead of, oh, I've got to look, I don't have the right answer yet. I've got to keep looking. Oh, I must need to
Right,
read some more books, right?
right. Yeah, I listen, I'm grateful for every book that I've ever read. It makes me a better therapist. That even, the fiction books that I read help me
Mhm.
connect to people's experiences that I may never live or have, right? Like I am grateful for all of that information and for the information that's out there. And um I think that we're often seeking the answers outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think one of the reasons that we do that, at least for me, is because I do know deeply, deeply inside of me what I need. But sometimes I'm afraid to do that thing because if that doesn't work, then what then? Right? And so I just keep looking for other people to tell me what to do because if that doesn't work, there's always another book I can read. There's always another thing I can learn. But it is this true leap of faith to turn inward and to shut off the fire hose of information and just say, okay, what is it? What do I need? I had this experience not very long ago, sometime last year, where I was really, really suffering. Like I was having all sorts of health problems and just having a hard time. And I was consuming so much information, podcasts about everything, trying to feel better. And I went to get a massage from my massage therapist, who is magic. And I was laying there, and he was working on me, and I had this moment of clarity in this conversation with my body of like, hey, I'm trying everything that I can think to do and it's not working. What are you trying to tell me? What do you need from me? I don't understand. And in this, like, I don't know, I wish I knew the way the body talks differently to each of us, but this like, no, you know what to do. You're supposed to write. You're supposed to write and you're supposed to rest. And I went home. I had been sitting well, let me back up. I had been sitting on a conversation I needed to have for a long time, but that I was afraid to have. I didn't know how it would shift or change my relationships. And while I was laying there during this massage, all the words I needed, because it was finally quiet and still and listening to me and not trying to consume information, all the words I needed came to me. And I drove home and I wrote this letter and I sent it. And then I took a 2-hour nap, which is exactly what I needed. But that only happened because I stopped the flow of information and could just finally ask my own intuitive wisdom what it is that I really needed, and then finding the courage to do that.
Wow. Whew,
Mm.
that is remarkable. So let's move from from your, your amazing life that you share with me and so many others in your having a insight into what's going on in your family and personal life to what made you take this journey to helping others? Like
Mm.
what drove that, and how are you helping people with their trauma and feeling more empowered in their lives?
Yeah. I think that it's kind of always been a part of me. I look back on conversations that I had with friends in middle school or high school where I was like the counselor without any real skills, right? Like, and boundaryless, which is something that we have to learn as therapists of really how to create an energetic boundary between what's my stuff and your stuff. And so early on, before I knew all of the things and the information and found those boundaries and had a better sense of my own self, it actually looked a lot like codependence. It was pretty unhealthy in the way that I took care of people. It looked like codependence. As I got healthier and as I did my own work and learned to lean into those areas of discomfort and grow and change, I was a non-traditional student. I didn't get my bachelor's until my daughter was in kindergarten. My youngest daughter was in kindergarten. And that was one of the most painful years of my life, but I knew I had to go to school. So I was going to school. Then like really good things happened and I met my husband, my partner, got married, moved to Colorado. And from there was like, "Oh, now what do I wanna do? Who do I wanna be?" And this just felt like this really natural place. I It was a space I already occupied in my life, but I knew I could occupy it and in a way that was meaningful to me and purposeful to me, um, and, healthy instead of that old version of it where I lost myself to other people. So I, got my master's degree in counseling when I was 40 years old and graduated and immediately started my own practice. One, because one of my top values is freedom, and I didn't want anyone telling me when I could and couldn't take a vacation or be home with my family. So I started my own practice. And from there, I see what I do. Obviously, it's a job, but it is the most sacred work I've ever been a part of because people let me see parts of them that they don't or never have let anyone else see. And so it really is this place of trust. I see miracles happen every single day as people learn to come home to their bodies. I work mostly with women. And I work with a lot of women who have been in abusive situations, mostly emotional abuse or spiritual and religious abuse, which usually those go hand in hand. Um, but I watch these women move through what I had to move through at one point in my life. And learn to trust themselves and learn to listen to their intuition and just become these like really powerful, empowered, embodied women. And that, like, I can't think of any job I would rather have than that.
That is just amazing to be able to see your own transformation and then be able to witness it in others. And also what I'm hearing from you, what I'm thinking about is creating this space for people to share things that they believe as unlovable, or like if I were to share this with anyone, that they would think I'm a terrible person, or and I'm sure that's not what you find at all. Like, you are holding this space of like there's nothing that you could share, or there's nothing about yourself
Yeah.
that is unlovable or shameful, or right, to get rid of that.
No, yeah, I mean, that's what we believe. That's
Mhm.
why we never share these things because we believe that they will make us unlovable, that people won't want to be around us. But I have yet in all these years now of doing counseling and of close friendships and meeting people at the grocery store who just somehow decide they want to tell me about her life. I have yet to think, oh, that's too much. Instead, it's like, oh, wow, like our grief, our pain, our humanness is alchemy. One, when we share it, it changes and shifts everybody involved. But two, it like tethers us to the hearts of other people. If we all believed, like if we all could for one day set aside shame and just move into this place of deep knowing and connection, the world would change. The world would change. So much pain that we cause other people and that is in the world comes from this belief that we're unworthy and we're trying to protect, right? We can't simultaneously be in protection mode and connection mode. And so when we have this shame that we believe makes us unlovable, we're in protection mode, which makes us defensive, which makes us hard to touch. But if we can just for a moment open up, we move into connection. And I was actually just yesterday reading a sermon by Nadia Boltz-Weber, who I highly recommend reading her stuff. But she was giving this sermon in a women's prison, and she said there, when we allow other people to see our wounds, we allow other people to be people, right? And yeah, we can revere someone's accomplishments. We can see those as really admirable. But to really love someone, it's when they let us see their wounds and allow ours to be shown as well.
I love that aspect of when you are able to be authentic, it allows others to be authentic as well.
Mhm.
It gives that openness of we're all okay
Mhm.
where we are at.
Yeah.
So
I in grad school, for good reason, they tell you that like you shouldn't disclose, you shouldn't do personal disclosure with clients,
yeah.
which I get, right? Because we've all sat with somebody who makes it all about them, and that's not helpful. But I also disagree with, because when I'm the expert in the room, that vulnerability and openness, it doesn't feel very safe to the person who's there with me. But when I'm just another human in the room who's walking somebody home, right? Who's just on the path with somebody and helping them stand up when they fall down and scrape their knees, and letting them know, hey, I have fallen down and scraped my knees. I have broken bones on this trail, and here we are together. That that is safety, right? Like there's I always get this wrong. I think it's a South African tribe has this way of greeting each other that translates to, now that you see me, I exist.
Mm.
And that is this, like that is the work of love, is really saying like, hey, I see you, and all of you, and all of you is welcome.
Wow. I I could when you were talking about your shift from where you used to be to where you are now, and you also mentioned about how you still have to really question those things when they come up in your body, when you're recognizing them, you're noticing them in a more experienced way now, right? In a healthier way, but you're still on the journey. You're still having this human experience, which is totally natural and
Mhm,
normal, right?
mhm, mhm.
But it's more refined than it used to be.
Right.
I could just see that as so validating, being able obviously not to, right, talk about your life when you're working with someone and yeah, making it about you and your path and your journey, but just being able to share like, "Hey, I still work on these things."
Mhm,
Like this is not a you're healed once and
mhm.
done forever. It's a natural part of just recognizing on a daily basis what what's coming up
Right.
and validating that.
Right. Well, we're all in the process of becoming. There is no destination.
Mm,
Like we often believe there is. Like, there's a day where I'll be healed, where none of this will bother me anymore. Or, like, that's just not true. One, because these things did happen to you, and you are going to have reminders of those. But like you said, it'll be a more refined experience. I may be reminded of this thing, but instead of feeling hijacked by my body and overwhelmed by it, I'll remember, oh, yeah, that's something that happened to me. And that was really sad, or that was really hard, and then know how to drop into my body and take care of my body instead of feeling overwhelmed, right? We have these experiences, but we're all in the process of becoming, all. And I have clients, who teach me, regularly teach me. So I may be 5 miles down the path on one path of becoming, but they come in and say something and it's like, ooh, like, oh, yeah, I need to look at that. I need to think about that. Or I have clients who have the most brave conversations about who they are and how they are in the world. And I have to really be curious. Am I that brave? Have I had those conversations? Do I let people see me this way? So it is this, I'm there to guide and to help, but I am constantly, constantly, constantly amazed by what I learn in those spaces.
So, can you share with us maybe some of your what do you offer as techniques for your clients when they're just maybe in a place of not listening to their body or feeling that major anxiety, or it could even show up as the opposite, like depression, right? And feeling like life is too much and too heavy and they can't move forward.
Right.
What technique, like you talked about writing was something for you
Hmm.
that was that you knew you needed to have that practice, that action. So what do you have some actions that people could start with?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think first you have to understand just a little bit about how the nervous system works, right?
Mm,
So when we're talking about anxiety and depression, those are symptoms of a
mm,
dysregulated nervous system. So if you think about your nervous system like a bell curve, the bottom being safety, like I feel very safe with you right now, like this is a good conversation, but my body feels settled and calm, right? But let's say all of a sudden the neighbors, I'm in an Airbnb, right? The neighbors start fighting or yelling. I'm going to have this activation that's going to like, ooh, something's not quite right. And I'll go into what's called social engagement. So that may mean that I'm like, hey, Rachel, are you okay if we just pause for a second so I can go and make sure everything's okay over there? I go out, they say, "Oh yeah, like sorry, we were just moving furniture. We weren't fighting. We were just fighting about where to put the couch or whatever." Okay, I got what I needed. I got that social engagement and I can go back to safety. But let's say I can't get that social engagement and the fight is happening and it's getting louder and louder. I'm going to move into fight or flight. So my heart's going to start racing. I'm going to feel kind of shaky and jittery. I'm going to need to get out. I don't want to be here anymore, right? Or I'm going to need to fight it somehow. But let's say I can't do that either. What I'm going to do is actually go into the highest level of arousal, which feels a little counterintuitive, but it's freeze. It's
mm.
this like, "Ooh, I'm just going to make myself really small and quiet and numb, and I'm going to wait for this to end." What happens for most of us, especially when we're in kind of compounded trauma or relational trauma or spiritual trauma, is our body's not meant to be in fight or flight for very long. That's too energy expensive. And so we bump up into freeze. And we can be in a functional freeze for a very long time. So when I was describing that part of me like years ago that just numbed on social media and I was in a functional freeze. I got stuff done. I still did the things I needed to do, but I was not really present for any of it. So when we're thinking about what we're experiencing, freeze is the home of depression, anxiety is that fight or flight. If we know, okay, if I'm in freeze and I want to come out of that, I'm actually going to have to come back down the other side of the bell curve. I'm going to have to hit fight or flight again. So it might make me feel a little anxious. I might get really angry. All of that is normal. But if we don't know that's normal, then that scares us and we bump ourselves right back into freeze, right? So it's normal. We're going to feel that again. But if we allow our body to come back down the way our body is meant to come back down, we'll come into social engagement again, and then we'll come back into safety. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah.
So when we're talking about tools that we can use, we kind of have to know where we are on that bell curve. So if I'm in fight or flight, which excitement and anxiety can feel very similar, right? It depends on how we're thinking about it. But going back to the beginning of this podcast, when you were like, oh, I'm feeling excited and I can feel kind of the energy building in my body, those long, slow exhales settle our bodies so quickly. They bring us out of fight or flight and into safety and connection again because they turn on the parasympathetic nervous system for us. So that's a really great tool. If we're in freeze, those long, slow out breaths actually might get us a little more freezy because they're really like slowing down our body. And so we need to learn how to engage in gentle movement. So what are the intentional things that I could do to move my body that help me come back into that activated fight or flight space, but that aren't anxiety because I don't have anything to fight or run away from anymore, but they're active. So maybe that's I go for a walk around the block. Maybe it's I actually speed up my breath a little bit and remind my body, hey, I'm okay. I'm safe. It's all right. Maybe we do some stretching. Whatever it is, we're doing something that's activated and purposeful when we're coming out of those stuck places.
Wow. I actually have never had that explained to me in that way before.
It's
I
really
am
helpful.
that is very, very helpful. Wow. I love that you actually broke up made a visual for me because I really appreciate that. Now I can see in my mind like, "Oh, wait, where am I at?" And these different levels because yeah, I think I've always just clumped them together as far as like, you know, like there's these things that are just uncomfortable and I love how you gave that visual for me and really helped me understand that coming through those feelings again is the way.
Mhm,
Like, the pain is the way,
mhm. Yeah.
the
Yes.
way through.
Yes. The wound is the place where the light enters in.
I love that.
Right? Like, yes, the pain is the way. Leaning into the discomfort, right? It is necessary. If we numb it, we just keep ourselves in that functional freeze. We're not actually engaged in life. We're just trying to survive it. And sometimes that's exactly what we need, right? Again, that bell curve, your body is doing exactly
Mhm.
what your body is supposed to do to help you survive whatever it is. The problem is that sometimes our nervous system can become overly sensitized. So the car alarm is really helpful on my car if someone's trying to break into it, but it can become so sensitized that every time a leaf falls on it, it goes off. And then it's no longer helpful. I spend my whole day just trying to turn it off and I can't get anything done because I'm just busy trying to turn this alarm off. The same thing can happen with our nervous system, and it's not that we're broken. It's that we've experienced so much that's been painful or hard that our body's working really, really hard to protect us. And so we have to work with the body to finish up those processes, right? To move through them and to move into the pain and the discomfort so that we can come back to a baseline where our body alarms when it's supposed to, but not to everything that seems somewhat familiar or similar.
Oh, I love that example. I appreciate how you are teaching me these concepts and everyone else who's going to, be able to enjoy this and listen and learn from you because that totally makes sense to me. I can picture that. Yeah, how really annoying it is to have these alerts that are meaningless, that really should not be setting off our emergency system as it would in an actual emergency. And who wants to live there?
Sure.
Oh my goodness.
And again, right, with this belief and knowledge that our body is on our team,
Mhm.
like, it's again, like, our body is
Mm.
doing exactly what our body's meant to do, it's just picking up the wrong signals.
Oh,
So we have different ways of perceiving things. I see you, you see me, we have this perception, right?
yeah.
Then we have, like, proprioception, which is I know exactly where my feet are, but I don't have to look down and see where they are. Like, I know where I am in time and space. And we have, like, um, interoception, so, like, this sense of what's happening in my body right now. So, I've had a little too much caffeine this morning, I can feel it kinda moving through my body, right? Like, I know what's happening in my body right now, and I know why. And then we have something called neuroception. So neuroception is our brain is constantly scanning the environment, our brain and our body constantly scanning the environment for threat. And it happens so quick we're not even aware of it. If we've experienced compounded traumas, if we've experienced relational traumas, what our brain is doing is creating this recipe of whatever the trauma was and kind of throwing it into a bowl and mixing it up, and it becomes this trauma memory. The problem is, most of the things in that recipe didn't actually hurt you.
Mm.
So, for instance, when I was in an abusive relationship, when I was in an abusive marriage, I had a ringtone on my phone. And it like I every time I got a text, it was this specific tone. And the tone didn't hurt me. It never hurt me, but it signaled when I was getting communication from somebody that was going to be painful or hard, right? So my brain started putting this in the recipe. That tone means something really bad is about to happen or something painful is about to happen. Years later, once I was out and healing, I was at the grocery store and somebody had that stupid tone on their phone, and my whole body lit up. I was immediately in fight or flight because my body believed that was still part of the recipe, right? And I had to work really hard to, like, calm that down. Settle, this is not that, right? And that's like the perfect phrase for anybody who's listening. When you are trying to help your body heal, this is not that is one of the most powerful tools that we have. But standing in the grocery store years later saying, this is not that, letting my body calm down, removing that from the recipe, right? So that I could tolerate that. But what was happening was my body was doing exactly what she's supposed to do to signal that there was danger. She just didn't know that that was no longer dangerous.
I am, like, taking notes. This is not that,
Yeah.
and our body is for us.
Yes.
It's for our life and
Yes.
for our good and not against us. I love it. I just wanna take these as, like, daily affirmations and to think about them. This is not that.
Mhm.
Oh, that's powerful. It's
It's
really good.
it's so powerful. It is so powerful, and it Carl Jung says that when we make the unconscious, or until we make the unconscious conscious, it rules our life, and we call it fate. And this is not that. Helps to bring the unconscious conscious, helps us to say,
Mm,
oh, that thing that's part of the recipe, that's not part of the recipe.
mm,
That's okay. I am safe. I am okay. And then instead of believing my body's always hijacking me, or I'll never be
mhm,
okay, or I thought I healed, but I didn't heal, we take back the power. We become embodied. We become empowered. We are the instruments for our own healing. It doesn't come from what we consume. That's helpful,
mm.
but we are the instruments for our own healing.
So, Brooke, can you take us through what a long, deep exhale means to you?
Sure.
Because I could see myself and others thinking like we might be breathing correctly and doing
Sure.
like healing breaths, but I would love just an example of what that means so that I can know and others can know like, okay, what is that? What should I be hearing or feeling during this deep breath that's going to reset, refocus my body and in addition, my heart, my brain, my
Yeah.
self.
W when we're doing this, we just want to try and make our exhale twice as long as our inhale.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's helpful to count that. I have found that in the beginning, when I'm working with clients, it's not all that helpful to count it. It actually makes them feel a little more anxious. And one of the reasons that it does is because most of us are not very good at breathing. We're we're very, very shallow breathers. And so we start to recognize, like, oh, actually, holding out an exhale for 8 counts is really hard. It kind of makes my body panic. We want to get there. We want to get to a place actually where we can breathe in for 8 and hold for a couple counts and breathe out for 16. But you're not going to be able to do that right away
Okay.
because your body is used to these very quick, shallow breaths. So in the beginning, just practicing like breathing in for 4, like, you wanna do it? You wanna
Yeah,
do it?
let's do it.
Yeah, so just breathing in for 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you might notice that your body's a little like, "Ooh, I gotta breathe again." Um, it just is an indication of how activated our life is most of the time. And so, spending some time in the morning before you get out of bed, practicing these breaths, in the middle of the day, practicing these breaths, in the evening, just like 3 or 4 rounds of it can start to teach our body how to come back into this very settled, grounded, longer exhale, which is so good for our body. We actually need carbon dioxide, and that long exhale helps to build that up, right? Helps to create that relaxation in our body. The other thing that's really helpful is humming. Um,
What?
yeah, yeah, humming does a few different things. One, it turns off our thinking. I mean, practice this next time if you are like in that rumination and the kind of the anxiety brain, just start humming a song that you love and you'll notice that like you're not able to connect to those thoughts in the same way. So humming's really helpful, but the other thing it does is it settles our vagus nerve.
Mm.
And our vagus nerve helps us to come back into that settled, still body as well.
Wow. I have felt the power of like chanting and
Mhm.
meditation with, sound and vibration. And
Yep.
but breathing and humming are just available. Like it's,
Right.
we don't, like it's available to us. How easy is that? Like I love the thought of we have the power within us, the knowledge and the wisdom. We're carrying it with us all the time and it's always available.
Always. You
Oh,
are you
love
are the
that.
instrument to your own healing. And we do have all the tools that we need, but it requires us to be still and to be
Mhm.
quiet and to listen, and that's one of the hardest things for us. But finding 5 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes at night to, you know, stream of consciousness journal, you're not writing for posterity, you're writing to to just, like, settle your body and brain dump, to be still and breathe and just notice what your body is communicating to you. Those are the most powerful tools for healing.
Oh, wow. Well, I am so grateful for this time that we have been able to talk. And I know that this has resonated with me. You have such a encouraging and calming presence and in your teachings. I know that it's just going to resonate with so many others. And so I appreciate our time together. And I would love for others to be able to connect with your work. And so we're going to have link to all of those things for people to listen to other recordings that you've done. You offer so much and offer your services as well for healing. And before we go, I always ask this question because I love hearing how are you, what practices are you doing, or what practice are you doing in your life right now to live your life with purpose?
Mm. I have learned to be curious about what makes me uncomfortable
Mm,
and be be mindful and aware of that and lean in. Yeah, I just yesterday had this experience of feeling judgmental about something, which I have learned is often an indication, one, that somebody is breaking a rule that I think that I have to follow, and so I should be curious about what that rule is and if I really do need to follow it. But the other part of that I've realized is there's usually something there that I really, really want. And what I was noticing in leaning into the discomfort and being curious was that even though they were breaking all these rules that I thought that I had to follow around productivity, they were so settled and comfortable in their connection with each other. And if I had just let the judgment be there and hadn't been curious about it, I wouldn't have seen, oh, I want more settled connection. I want to be free of the rules that make me feel like I have to be productive and always creating something and just let myself be with the people I love.
wow. I I want that as part of my purpose as well. I love that.
Yeah.
I am so grateful to have you on my journey in my life and that I know you, Brooke. You are a light. So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today.
Oh, you're welcome. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you so much for joining me today. You can check out more over at rachelegbert.com. Your life is too precious to live just by chance or by default. I want you to live your life on purpose. We will see you next time.